There's a lot of S tier, man. Even D tier doesn't mean you should never learn it at all. It just means it's probably not your highest priority right in the beginning. I've been studying Japanese for about 13 years now, and this is going to be my ranking of every single grammar point that shows up on the JLPT N5 test. And I'm going to rank them on levels of like what I think is not only the most useful, but I'm going to rank them on like how easy they are to learn. So for example, if something is really difficult to learn but really helpful, it might not get an S rank. But if it's really easy to learn and it's like not that common, it might not get an S rank. So S rank's going to be fairly easy to learn and super useful. Like going to show up all the time. You should really learn it as soon as possible type of thing. D rank is stuff that maybe shouldn't even be on the N5. That's pretty much how I'm going to approach it. Dan, my editor, made this list for me, so we'll see. He made it from this list of grammar points that are on our website, ToKini where we jump into basically every single grammar point in the JLPT N5, which is the lowest level of the Japanese language proficiency test. So yeah, got example sentences here. I might pop in here from time to time to grab some example sentences or see what happens, but let's go ahead and jump into it. We'll start with the de particle. And the de particle gives people trouble, and it really shouldn't. It often gives them trouble because they're worried about, they mix it up with the ni particle. And there's a reason why that probably shouldn't happen, but it comes down to the way they're taught, and that is they're translating them to English as things like at or in or by, like by bus for day, or in the park for de, whereas ni is also often taught with the word in, at, and things like that. But that's not really helpful. They should really be taught in terms of like what they do. And the de particle, what it does is it marks something like a tool or a location that you use to do an activity, some verb of some sort. So you're using the location that it marks, or you're using the method of transportation that it marks to do something. And then the ni particle, it just always marks the target of something. It marks the target of a verb. So like the target of movement. My target is the shop. I'm going to go there. Or my target is meeting some person, and that person's the target of my meeting with them. Or I give something to someone and that's my, they're my target, and I give the thing to them. So ni always marks the target of some action, whereas de marks something that's used to do an action, used to do an action. So it's really not that confusing if you know what it means, like what it does. So I'm not gonna, because if you're taught well, it's pretty easy. It's not going to be down here. It's super useful. Pretty much all particles are going to be way up here because you're going to see them all the time. You can go to the shop via bus. I often teach de as via. So basu de iku, I go via bus, something like that. It's going to be super useful. You're going to use it all the time. So it's pretty much S tier. Like pretty much all of the early particles are going to be A, S tier. I might move these around as we go forward, but I'm going to go ahead and put that up in S tier. And I'm going to bring the ni particle up there as well. The ni particle always marks the target. I just mentioned that. It's pretty simple. It can be very confusing, even when it's part of like grammar points that like they combine different verbs. Like you'll often see like tabe ni iku. So that's to eat and go is often how that's translated, or to go to eat is how we translate that in English. And you'd say, well, that ni particle isn't marking the topic, but it really is. It's marking the thing you're going to do. The target is tabe, to eat, which is the shortened mas form, the mas stem of the verb to eat. And that's the target, eating, of go. You're going, target, eat. Eating is the target. So it's always the target marker. De is always the utilization marker. There's really no nuances beyond that I can think of. If you can think of some, drop it in the comments and I'll correct myself. I'm always happy to do that. So I'd say those are S tier. Yeah, let's pop over to the purple. Oh, jump. It's getting right into the harder stuff. So this is the to mo particle. What they basically do is you come with all particle combinations, right? Essentially what they do is the second particle is acting on the combination of the particle that comes before it and whatever that particle marks. So it's like, well, here, inu to aruku. So dog with, so the to particle usually means with, walk. So dog with walk. And now the mo is going to mark the next part as the thing that is also done. Neko to mo. So with cat also. So with cat also. So the neko to is marked with mo. That whole thing is marked with mo. And then walk. So it's a little bit like combination particles can be very confusing. They're often taught as standalone things themselves. And that's okay. But it sort of hides what actually happens with combination particles, which is usually that the noun that the particle marks is being acted on by the second particle. That's what I've found is usually the case. There are exceptions to this, I'm sure, that I could come up with, but I can't off the top of my head. So this is another one of those that it's just, you got the noun before to, and that noun combined with to is modified by mo, which means also. So it's a little complicated to get your head wrapped around, but it is very useful. It shows up a lot. But it's probably not like way up there as something you need to learn right away. For example, really, like we should probably have talked about to first here. So the to particle, which means with, we've already, I've already brought that up. To particle means you do something with someone. You do a verb in the sentence, and this marks who or what you do it with. And the last example sentences is it was walking with a dog and walking with a cat. So that just means with. Super useful. S tier. And then mo particle, it means also. Also, absolutely must learn that as soon as possible. It just marks a noun as the also thing. It marks many things as the also thing. So for example, pan o tabeta. So I ate bread. Niku mo tabeta. So meat also ate. So the mo particle, in English, we say I also ate. So it seems like we're marking I with also in English. So people are tempted to say watashi mo niku o tabeta. But Japanese doesn't do that. The mo particle always marks the thing it modifies. It's very important. It marks directly the thing it modifies. I'm not the person that also ate meat. Or I also, like someone else, if we marked watashi with mo, that would mean that someone else ate whatever I was talking about before, and I also ate that thing. But what we're saying is I ate one thing, and then I also ate this other thing, so we need to mark that other thing with mo. So mo is very useful. A little bit confusing at first because of that distinction. So I have to drop it down to A, just because it is a little bit more difficult than the other particles, I think, just because of how different it is from English. Of course, the others are different from English too, because they just don't exist in English. But that's besides the point. So we're gonna bring mo down to A tier for now, and we'll say tomo. Tomo is probably like it's obviously super useful. So really, pretty much any of these N5 grammars, they really, as far as whether or not you should learn them at all, like even D tier doesn't mean you should never learn it at all. It just means it's probably not your highest priority right in the beginning, and it might not show up immediately in all the things you're going to be running into as a beginner. So with that in mind, if we think of that ranking, I'm going to move tomo down to C rank. So we've got E adjectives past tense. E adjectives past tense. Okay, so an E adjective in the past tense would be something like tanoshii. So tanoshii is an E adjective that means to enjoy or something is enjoyable. Yeah, because it's an adjective. It marks something as enjoyable. The past tense would be tanoshikatta. So this is something that I think you need to learn pretty early on. Most textbooks teach it pretty early on because what people are tempted to do is that they learn the past tense of, for example, desu. We'll bring up desu right here. Where's desu? It means it is. It is. And I'll just drop an A for now. And it's used just like is in English. So they'll learn the past tense of that, which would be was in English and is deshita in the polite Japanese or datta in casual Japanese. And they'll attach that to the end of adjectives when they want to make a past tense of the adjective. Tanoshii deshita. So was enjoyable. But that's grammatically incorrect because adjectives in Japanese, unlike in English, conjugate. So they conjugate, they have tense. So The past tense of e adjectives is just you cut the e and add katta, tanoshikatta, which means that I enjoyed or something was enjoyable. But you see, for e adjectives in general, like in their base form, to make them polite, you add desu on the end. So it's very tempting to make it deshita for the past tense, which is it's just grammatically incorrect. You might hear kids make that mistake once in a while, but I'm not even sure about that. I feel like they learn short forms first, so you're probably not going to hear a Japanese kid make that mistake very often. Which means that you need to learn this pretty fast. E adjective past tense needs to be very early on, and it's going to show up all of the time. So we want that right away. Desu is obviously, it's a polite, it is. You can think of the casual form as da. They're slightly different, but essentially the same thing. And that's also needs to be learned right away. It gives you some politeness to adjective sentences, and just means it is. Andy desu. I'm Andy. So very, very useful, very important, very simple. Drop that into the S tier. All right, let's drop it down to, well, let's pull this ya particle out. Ya particle, I'm not going to give this S tier because it's not super straightforward. Like, I mean, it is, but it can be a little confusing because we also have this to particle here, which means and. It's literally just and, but only for nouns. So we've already learned and for like also verb, which is mo, but and for nouns like neko to inu, so cat and dog, requires the to particle, which means and. Let's see if I've got a good example sentence on here. I'm sure we got something, eh? Andy to Yuki desu. So is Andy and Yuki. It is Andy and Yuki. Gakusei to kaishain desu ka? Is a student and company employee, or are you a student and company employee? So those are two nouns combined with the to particle. You can have more than two nouns, obviously, and combine them with the to particle, but it's very straightforward, and you need it if you want to talk about more than one thing at a time. So way up there in S tier, needs to be learned right away. Ya is similar, but it does the same thing. It marks multiple nouns. So we could also say Andy ya Yuki. But it is slightly different because it signifies an inexhaustive list. To is an exhaustive list. It's just Andy and Yuki. Andy to Yuki. Yuki is my wife, by the way. If you've been a subscriber to this channel, you know who that is. Sorry for those of you who are new. Please subscribe. You'll learn much more about us and learn a lot more Japanese too. So check it out. Ya is an inexhaustive list. So it's like giving examples. Things like Andy and Yuki, or people like Andy and Yuki. Maybe not even both of them, just they might be two of the people that are involved in some situation. And that's what that's used for. So it's a little less useful right away, and a little, there's a little bit more concept behind it. It's a little bit more abstract than just the straight up to particle. So we're going to drop that into B. All right, let's see. We're going to go back up to red. And we'll take a look at the, these are fun. Oh yeah. O particle, absolute S tier. Most of the particles, the base particles, they gotta be S tier. I mean, if you learn the particles right away, your life will be so much easier. And if you learn them well, your life will be much easier. Unfortunately, there's nothing really like them in English. So learning them well ends up taking a lot of exposure just to really figure out the nuances. Like being told what I'm telling you here is not enough to really get them. But with that said, getting a good explanation can help. The O particle marks the object that a verb acts upon. That's it. That's all it is. It always marks the object that the verb is done to. That's it. That's O particle. Not much to say there. Hi. We're going to move on to the ga particle and the wa particle. The thing with these is, I think ga can be S tier and wa needs to be, A tier. Because wa is harder than ga. It's more confusing than ga. People think they're more confused by ga. They're not. They're more confused by wa. It's because of the distinction between the word topic and subject. And people tend to mix them up. And many teachers, especially native Japanese teachers, tend to say that the topic also marks the subject. When it marks the subject, it's basically a coincidence. It's a little more complicated than that, but okay, let's go over it. So ga particle marks the subject of the sentence. That's it. The subject of the sentence. The subject that it's about, the subject, the thing that does the verb, if there's a verb. The wa particle marks a new topic of discussion. Now, the new topic of discussion may be the subject. And because of that, sometimes when you state a new topic that happens to also be the subject, we don't also state the subject with the ga particle. It's just not necessary. But that makes people think that the wa particle marks the subject of the sentence, and that's not what it's doing. It's bringing up a new topic of discussion, new thing we're going to talk about. Okay? That's what it does. It puts the focus on the latter half of the sentence. So it says, hey, this is the new thing we're talking about. And it's letting you know that what's coming after that is about that thing, which means that the quote focus is on the rest of the sentence, not the thing that's being marked by wa. Whereas ga marks the subject, the thing that does whatever the action is in the latter half of the sentence, which means that ga puts focus onto what it marks because that's the subject. Yeah, and the wa particle also has some other functions, which are technically not N5, but because it has other functions, and it's not always clear to, I think, natives that they're different, you'll often see sentences being like lumped into study materials that are actually the wa particle doing something completely different than just marking the topic, because the wa particle can also be used for things like contrast, saying I like that thing but not that thing. For example, you never want to say to a girl, 今日は綺麗だね. Never ever say that. Today topic, you are pretty. Never say that sentence. Why? Because what it's saying is today topic. Today new topic, you're pretty, which implies that other days they aren't. So that's another function. It's not just the topic particle there. It's adding contrast. It's saying, as for today, you're pretty, not other days. So you have to be a little bit careful with the wa particle. And even though you need to learn it pretty early on, you're going to struggle with it. It's going to give you trouble. Hopefully what I just mentioned will help a little bit. But I think that's going to bring it down to a B. You're going to learn it like first. It's going to be the first thing you learn, but that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. So I'm going to pop that down there. Let's go ahead and bring up, we'll go with A particle. A particle is interesting. So the A particle is definitely not S tier. It's not A tier. It's not B tier. So the A particle sort of has two functions. It's often taught, and I've actually taught this in the past, to my, not embarrassment, but yeah, that it's essentially the same as the ni particle when marking the target of movement. So when you're going to some location, it does often have the same effect. So if you mark Kyoto e iku, so to Kyoto, the location marked by a particle, go, it's pretty much the same meaning as Kyoto ni iku. And I've told people in the past that just choose one and you can use whichever you want, and that the a particle sounds a little bit more literary. And that's true to an extent, but it also has sort of a nuance that it's marking direction more so than target. For example, if someone is going to go to a shop and wait out front of it, and then you're going to go on to the next place, they might use e in that situation to suggest that you should go in the direction of the shop, and that shop is not the actual target destination. So there's that slight difference in nuance that is not always what is being expressed. Sometimes it really is just marking the target of movement. And sometimes it really is just marking the target of like a letter you sent to someone. But sometimes it just marks direction. So it's a little bit more, it has a little bit more deeper nuance, and its usage is a little bit more constricted than the ni particle, because it can only be used when it is being used as a target marker for movement or like giving things to someone. At least off the top of my head, of course. So I think because those nuances, the fact that it's a little bit dated or literary, and the fact that it can add some nuance that you're not intending to when like giving directions or something. Just because of that, I think I'm going to pop it down to like a B or C. I think C is looking lonely, so I'm going to put it there for now. We might move it later. All right, moving over to the purple line. We're gonna go with, these are all kind of hard, but let's go ahead and just jump into it. We've got the yori particle, yori. So this is N5. If you know this, yori, hoga, yori, is usually a combination of two particles. It's interesting. Well, yori at least is a particle. And what it does is it marks the thing that is the lesser in a comparison. So for example, if we jump over to yori, I might have a good example sentence. Neko, that's a grammar mistake. Neko no hou ga inu yori kawaii. So there should be a no there. But anyway, if there was a no there, I'm gonna have to fix that. I gotta make a note. I don't have any paper. Watch this video later, Andy. Neko no hou ga inu yori kawaii. So this marks the dog as being the lesser in the comparison. And the comparison word here, the adjective is kawaii, so cute. So neko is marked by hoga, which marks that as the one that is more in the comparison. The cat is more cute, the dog is less cute. So the cat is cuter than the dog is what's being implied. So yori always marks the lesser, and because of that, it allows you to drop the more one in the comparison, in this case, neko. So you could just say, inu yori kawaii na. So like if you look at something, it's a cat or like a platypus, and someone asks you, what do you think? You could be like, inu yori kawaii. So it's cuter than a dog, which I don't know. Maybe the platypus. I think I like dogs more. But anyway, something like that. That's basically what it does. Very, very useful. Usually not taught very early on. And I think that's wise. It's a little bit, probably fits like later on in N5. Not something you need right away. Super, super like useful though. So even though you might not need to learn it right away, like it's gonna be super useful for you. So I guess we could pop that into A tier, eh? Yeah, we'll go with that. Past tense form, short past tense form. So it's the conjugation of verbs. Okay, so this allows us to put verbs when we're talking in casual speech or in like complex sentences. It allows us to put verbs into the past tense, in the short form past tense. It's a bit complicated. It's exactly the same as the te form as far as the conjugation rules. So I suggest watching like my te form song, the 10-hour te form song, because there's no rhyme and reason to it like there is like with mas conjugation, which we'll go over in a minute. So it's a little bit harder to learn, which drops that out of S tier. It's just like a rote memorization type of thing, or like a memorization song type of thing. But then it's very useful because obviously you want to be able to put verbs into the past tense. If you can't do that, you can't say that you did something. You can only say that you do something or that you will do something. So you absolutely need it. Most textbooks and things are going to teach you polite forms. And for the JLPT, the Japanese Language Proficiency Test, there's going to be more focus on polite Japanese. With that said, now, if you want to actually talk to people and make friends, this will become a thing. Although when you first meet people, you probably shouldn't be using these short forms. Although as learners, we're often forgiven if we do. I don't think I can put it in A tier because you probably don't want to learn it like immediately. And it is super useful, but probably not going to be the first thing you want, like top of your list of things to learn, because it's a little overwhelming, the amount of rote memorization that's necessary. Which is one of the big reasons. It's super useful. Like I prefer to learn short forms first because it makes polite Japanese easier later. But with that said, the te form and the ta past tense are can be a little bit overwhelming. So for students, I feel you don't want to overwhelm people too early on, or else they drop it pretty fast. So we're gonna pop that in the B tier for now and drop over to the teal. We'll go with the ga conjunction and kedo conjunction because they're essentially the same. Kedo can also be lengthened to keredo or keredomo. And ga, they both mean the same thing. Kedo is the more casual version of ga, and what they do is you use them as conjunctions. You use them to make complex sentences, basically, and you combine the two clauses with this conjunction that means but. Just means but. So X but Y. And they both mean the same thing. They're both very, very useful. I'd say equally as useful. Maybe we'll put kedo down in B because it is casual, and you're probably going to learn casual forms a little bit later. In our vocabulary course, I go for mostly casual forms pretty early on. but for most of you, you are going to end up learning polite Japanese first. So you'll probably run into ga more often in the beginning, which makes it a little bit useful to sort of be aware of early on. So yeah, I'll put ga up in A and kedo in B, although arguably they could both be A. All right, back up to the red, we've got the ka question particle. You put it at the end of a polite Japanese sentence to indicate that that full sentence is a question. There's also other things that it can do when it's in the middle of a sentence, but that's not until N4, so we're not going to worry about that right now. It just marks the whole sentence as a question, and you only generally use it, although it has other usages, with polite Japanese questions. That's all it does, just marks it as a question, and it's very, very important. If you want to ask a question that you have it. If you're speaking polite Japanese, we'll drop that in A tier, I think. Okay, so since we already talked about hoga during the yori one, we're going to bring that up here as well. We'll drop that in right next to the yori. Hoga yori. We'll drop that in the A tier. Nothing much going on there. We got to go to purple though. Let's get another purple one. We'll give us is Nagara N5? I don't think Genki teaches it in the first book. That's interesting. Nagara is interesting. It marks it's a conjunction kind of I guess. It marks X as the thing you're doing while also doing Y. So while doing X, Y occurs. Or while doing X, I also do Y. X is always in the mas stem of a verb. So like tabe nagara hanashimasu. So while eating, I talk. Or benkyou shinagara ongaku o kiku. Study while. So that's the mas stem of suru. Benkyou shinagara ongaku o kiku. So music, object, listen. So yeah, it's a little bit advanced. I can't even remember if it shows up in Genki 2. I think it might, but I guess it is N5. Otherwise, I wouldn't have put it on this list. It's definitely not like priority for the N5. I don't think it's one of the later things you're gonna learn because it's a little bit complicated. You already need to have quite a bit of grammar down before something like this before you'll even be able to use it. If we were in N4, I'd pop this up in like BA, easy. But since it's N5 and I feel like it's like slipped into N5 on some of like later tests, and that's why we had to slip it in here, I feel like it's going to be low on your priority list. Once again, super useful, but we got to give something a D, right? So we're going to give it to that one. Okay, te form conjugation. This goes right along with the ta past tense, but it's got to go higher. And that's because the te form is just like all pervasive. I kind of want to give it S tier. The te form is just too strong. Like I know I said that the ta past tense, because it's a little bit complicated to learn the conjugations, it's hard to like justify giving it a higher rank. Even though te form has the exact same rules, when you learn it, you've like unlocked so much because of just what you can do with it. You can use it to create just complex sentences. So kind of use it like and, but with verbs. But you can also use like auxiliary verbs, they're called. So verbs that are connected to the te form to be like, do this and this, or like doing this. Yeah, it can do so much. As you can see, the rules are a little bit complicated, but it can be so incredibly useful. Yeah, it's just te form is too powerful. It's gotta be S. But I wouldn't suggest learning it like right away. You want to get a little bit more comfortable before you try and dive into that. But when you learn it, it's just like so much unlocks. So yeah, it's gotta be S. It's gotta be S tier. So something that is often just taught as a word, but is technically a particle, and that's why I've listed it here, is kara, which means from location or from person. So basically, let's see, konbini kara ie made. These are basically, made is essentially, it goes along with kara. They go together, basically. So it means from until. So from the konbini until my house. Konbini kara ie made. And that means from the konbini to house, until the house. Genki doesn't teach made at all in the first book, which is absurd to me. I don't think they teach it at all. And kara can be used for so many things. It can be not just, both of these are not just like from physical locations. They can also be like from a time until a time. So 9時から10時まで. So from 9 to 10 until 10 o'clock. So they're very, very versatile. Yeah, I feel like they have to be right up there in the A tier. And then we have だから. And the reason I want this da to be in parentheses, because the da is only there when a sentence starts with this phrase, or if what comes before kara is a na adjective or a noun. Otherwise, it's just kara. So the reason comes before kara, and then we have the result. So it's kind of like therefore or because of X, Y. So it's very, very useful as a conjunction. I have some example sentence. 食べたからラーメン屋に行かない. So ate, therefore, ramen shop, target, not go. Go not. 行かない. Or 猫だからケーキを食べない. So cat, therefore. So there's a noun, so we have to have だからケーキを食べない. So cake, object, not eat. A lot of nais here. But anyway, that's basically what it's used for. So very, 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 very useful. Yeah, I guess A. It could be S, but I think A is okay. Yeah, we'll go with A. All right, so that was だから. We're going to go back to the red tier and get us じゃない. So じゃない goes right along with, where's this? There's this. It is the short form negative version of です or だ. And it just means is not. Is not. So you use it with nouns and non-adjectives to mean is not that thing. So 猫じゃない means not cat. Not cat. Now you cannot use this with e adjectives. E adjectives are actually they're conjugated themselves, just like I was mentioning. You have conjugations for e adjectives especially. Unlike you do in English. So we could probably pull this up. This is the same as じゃない, but for e adjectives. So おいしい, おいしい means delicious, and おいしくない means not delicious. So you cut off that e on the end and add くない means not that adjective. 楽しい, 楽しくない. So that's one of the examples. It's probably not じゃない level, but it's pretty high up there on what you need to learn right away, because if you ever want to say that something is not delicious, you have to know this. So we're going to give that A tier. It goes right along with じゃない. They're similar levels. That's good. Now we'll come over to the purple te kara. So now you've learned the te particle, eh? So you can do things like use te combined with kara, the kara particle. And this is another, not particle combination, because the te is not necessarily a particle. Instead, it's a conjugation. But if you have tabete kara something something, it means that after I eat, I will do some other thing. So eat from something will happen, or eat from will go somewhere, for example. So it's very useful for giving like sequences of events, just a combination of a nice conjugation and a particle that works out to be like kind of like a conjunction. So it's very helpful. A little bit complicated because you need the te form first, and it's probably not going to be taught super early in most courses, but I'd say I'd give it B. I want to give it B tier, but I guess it is a little bit specific. Not something you have to worry about getting done right away. So maybe we'll put that in the C tier. Yeah, that's fine. So let's go ahead and pull something out of here. We'll go with tai. I don't know if I'd call it a conjugation. It's like an ending that you can add to the mas stem of verbs. Oh, wait. I've been talking about the mas stem so much, and like I haven't actually brought it up. Let's find mas. Where's mas? There it is, mas. The mas conjugation. That's absolute. Nah, it's not S tier. Is it S tier? It's where 90% of students quit using the textbook Genki when Genki teaches this. At least 90%. It's why I started teaching from Genki, because I disliked how Genki taught the mas conjugation. And I thought I could do it better, and I think I did. You guys who have been here for a while, you let me know what you think in the comments, but I think I did. So it's actually like not difficult, and it allows you to take a verb, and you basically, when verbs are in their quote dictionary form, you can use them like as they are to give you the present or future tense in a casual situation. So like taberu, if you look up the word taberu in a dictionary, that comes up as the verb to eat, taberu, right? And you can use it in that form. You can just say taberu to mean will eat or eat. But that's casual Japanese, and since there's politeness levels in Japanese that are much more important, and you don't really want to be using short forms with people you've just met, your teachers, things like that, it is very important to learn this pretty early on. And if you're taught it right, it's actually not that difficult. To make the mas form, you just take the ending of the dictionary form for most verbs. You move up a hiragana chart. So basically, asobu. So asobu ends in the sound bu, right? It ends in bu. So bu has the consonant b and the vowel sound u if we were to write it in Roman characters. So bu. To conjugate it into the mas form, which makes it the polite present future tense, all you have to do is you change that u part, the u, to i and add mas. So asobu becomes asobimasu. That's it for almost all the verbs except for one other type. There's another type of verb, which taberu, to eat, is one of. That ends in an iru or eru sound. So whatever comes before the final character, which is always a ru, if it's an i or an e sound, it often is what's called an ichidan verb. Not always, there's a bunch of exceptions and you just have to memorize them. But what happens with those, like taberu, is you just cut the ru off and add masu. Tabemasu. You hear that be? It has an e. Tabe, e, ma, eru, eru. That's an eru, iru verb. We call those ichidan verbs. All you do is cut the ru and add mas, tabemasu. And that's it. That's the mas form. So I don't really want to give it S tier, but I gave desu S tier. And basically mas des, or that's what we call like the basic politeness level, is mas des forms. So ending things that, nouns and adjectives, non-adjectives, you end the sentence with des. And verb ending sentences, you use mas. And even adjectives, e-adjectives, you even end a sentence with des. So we call them des mas politeness. Yeah, it's probably pretty important to have that up here at the top. We'll just drop that over here with des mas. That's got to be S tier, eh? Yeah. It's not too complicated, so I think it's fine up there. But anyway, that brings us back to the tai. And when you have the mas stem, which is whatever you do before you add mas, whatever you have, tabe would be the mas stem of taberu, and asobi would be the mas stem of asobu. So when you have that, you just add tai, asobi tai, utai tai, tabe tai. You now have said, I want to do that verb. So I want to eat, I want to sing, I want to play, I want to whatever. So it's very easy as long as you've learned the mas form first. But since you have to learn the mas form first, we can't obviously give it S tier, but we always want to talk about things that we want to do. So it's got to be A tier, right? I think it's one of the last things you learn in Genki. I think it's lesson 11, but it's got to be A tier, right? That's super important for people to be able to talk about what they want and they want to do. Da is essentially, it's des, really. They're basically the same thing, but it's for casual speech. The difference is you don't add da to the end of like e-adjectives. Like tanoshii desu is the polite way to say tanoshii. So that just makes it polite, right? But you don't say tanoshii da in casual speech. You just say tanoshii on its own. So da is just used after non-adjectives and noun and adjectives at the end of a sentence to mean it is. So it essentially means the same thing as des, but it's a little less prevalent in casual speech than des is. And usually it's not used at the end of a sentence on its own because it's quite rough and masculine. So it's often combined with things like the yo and ne particles, which we'll go ahead and bring up. I'm going to pop da down to B just because of that. It's a little bit harder to use, I guess you could say, than des. Maybe we'll even drop that down to C. You're going to hear it a lot in like anime and stuff, but still even then it's going to be combined with things like the yo particle, which I love. I love the yo particle. It's very important. Well, let's see if I can find it. There it is, yo ending particle. Yo particle, these days I often translate it as friendly new info. When you see a sentence that's ending in the yo particle, the simplest way to think of it, although there are some other usages not taught in N5 though, it generally means the friendly new info. Because in casual speech, you are going to be using it very frequently after things like da, because it softens it up a little bit. It makes it a little bit more friendly. It's very useful. You're going to use it in in polite speech as well. But it's not as important to learn right away as like de particle, ni particle, to particle, mas. Although you are going to learn it pretty early on. But I'm still going to drop that to A. And then ne, I'm also going to put in A tier, because the ne ending, it's something like, I've always taught it like the way Canadians tend to use the in Canadian English. So it's just like, right? Don't you think? Yeah, it's like asking for confirmation. I think we're gonna go ahead and jump into one of the ones I like to explain the least, which is でしょう and でしょう and でしょうか. So they're not really fun to talk about, but at least for me. But we're gonna go ahead and bring those up anyway. And I believe we have 3 grammar points here. We have でしょう, and でしょうか. They're basically all similar, and they're the same word, of course, but they're each slightly nuanced in their own way. So でしょう is often shortened to でしょ in casual conversation, and when it's used as a question, it tends to mean something like "don't you think?" or "right?" And you can kind of use ne in this way, but this one is really more so trying to get confirmation from the speaker or from the listener that what you think is true. Like, this is the truth, right? 食べたでしょ? You ate, right? 食べたね is a little more friendly and less like, it's not necessarily looking for a response. It really is more just like the Canadian I ate, less so than the you ate, right? That's what this one is like. You ate, right? 食べたでしょ? Or in this case, 食べたでしょ? 飲んだでしょ? You drank, right? So that one is pretty straightforward. I wouldn't say it's like super high on your priority list, just because like it's taught much later on. It's a little bit more complex, and it's limited in its usage. Quite limited in its usage. You're not going to be using it constantly. I mean, I use it quite a bit, but we're gonna drop that. We're gonna pop that one in the D section, just because it is very, very specific. If we were to take a look at one of the other でしょう though, the regular old でしょう, this one, I don't know if we can give this one a D, just because it is quite common. You're gonna hear it a lot. If you watch any news, which you probably aren't in N5, but you will if you try and get to N1, you're going to hear this all the time. 明日雨が降るでしょう. Tomorrow, rain will probably fall. It will probably rain. So basically what this does is it means probably, but it's used basically in the same way as です, which means it is, but it softens it. In Japanese, a common theme in making things more polite is the less sure you are of yourself in your sentence, like the less sure of yourself you sound, the more polite it is. So in this case, instead of saying 雨が降る, 雨が降ります, which sounds like you're confident it's going to rain, instead you use でしょう, even in a weather report. I feel like American weather reporters would get so much less flack if they just used words like でしょう. It'll probably rain. It's not quite as uncertain as the English probably, which is why it can be used in situations like this, I guess. But it does it's like a soft です that you can sort of translate as probably. So it's going to be very common. You're going to run into it a lot. You might even use it quite a bit, but it's not going to be something you learn right away or that you need to learn right away. It will probably show up quite a bit on the N5, or at least a little bit. But I think I'll go ahead and give this, I think I'll give it C. Kana? C is probably fine. でしょうか is pretty much, it's similar to でしょう. I mean, it's the same word, but we'll just read it. When used at the end of a question sentence, でしょうか is more polite than ですか. It indicates that the speaker is asking for a guess at the truth of something, not necessarily at a solid answer. So it's kind of, you know how I was mentioning with でしょう, it's like a softer です. Well, Same thing here. It's a softer desu ka, which is this the case? A question with a des at the end. And when used in the past tense, it often indicates that you're doubting your memory and are asking the listener to confirm whether or not you are correct. Sometimes this can be used without the ka and instead with downward intonation indicating the same thing. So softening things up makes them more polite, and that's what you're doing with this as well. We're going to pop this right up in the C as well, although you could argue that they belong on the B tier. But for now, I think I'll leave them there. We'll review it a little bit later. Let's just stay in the purple line and go with nakereba naranai. Now, nakereba naranai, as you'll see from my, if we go ahead and look at nakereba naranai in my, my grammar points here, it's not actually just nakereba naranai. There are actually many different ways you can say the same thing here. It's often translated as must or have to in English, but you can use a short negative conjugation of a verb and nakereba naranai or nakereba ikenai, nakereba dame, nakya naranai, nakucha naranai, nai to naranai. There's like a million ways and you can combine all of these in the different ways as well. They all mean must. It means not, if not, no good, or if not, doesn't become, or if not, bad. And that translates into English as must. So there's many different ways to say this, and it's very, very long if you say it in full. You can, of course, shorten it. You don't need the second part, actually, in casual speech. You can just say things like tabenakya, which is a shortened form of tabenakya ikemasen, or tabenakya ikenai. And if you just say tabenakya, people know you mean I must eat. In casual speech, it's much easier to use, and it is a very, very common thing that you need to say. You got to say, like, I have to go to work today. Yeah, things like that. Very, very important one to learn, though it is a bit difficult to remember at first. But despite it being difficult to remember, I feel like this has got to be A tier. Like it's just so necessary. Like you need this one to express yourself. I mean, you need everything else to express yourself too, but you can still express what you want to say just in a slightly less polite way. Even if you don't know de shou or de shou ka, like if you know this and the ka question marker, you can express exactly what you wanted to. If you use de shou ka, it's just a little bit more polite. So I think nakereba naranai, to express that you must do something. There's no other way to express that, unfortunately. At least that you learn in N5, that we've learned so far. So the only way to express something that is that important, it's got to come up here. And I feel like it's on the same level as tai. Like I want to do something or I must do something. I feel like it belongs right up there with that. So we're going to give that A tier. Let's go ahead and another really important one, koto ga aru. I feel like this is A tier, but I also feel like it can arguably be B tier, because by the time you're getting into conversations where you need this, you are already going to know this stuff, because like you wouldn't be able to know what was going on in a conversation where this is going to be popping up probably, unless you've picked up a lot of this stuff already. So maybe it's not like something you're going to learn right away. But with that said, I think I got to give it A. What this means is it's something like have you ever, or I have the experience of. Like if you were playing Never Have I Ever, you'd have to use this. Uni o tabeta koto ga aru. So I have the experience of eating sea urchin. So the koto ga aru marks the thing you've done before. And you can also use it as a question. Koto ga arimasu ka? Or in casual forms, just koto ga aru with rising intonation. And yeah, so it's very, 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 very helpful for like getting to know people, because you can ask questions like, have you ever done this? And you can answer questions like, have you ever done that with, yes, I have done that before. Or you can just mention like, I've never seen that thing before, whatever. I've been to Spain before, whatever you want to say. Expressing yourself, it's going to be very, very, very helpful. I feel like if your goal is to communicate, you're going to need this pretty early on, which gives me an A tier vibe. If your goal, which a lot of people's is these days, is just to consume content, they call it immersion, but it's essentially just consuming content. It's slightly less important to get down right away. I guess I'll throw it in B. It could be A. We'll put it in B. All right, so the first conjugation I teach is the negative short form. I actually teach that first because I think it's quite simple and it's very useful, and I teach you how to use verbs in their short, casual versions in their short casual dictionary form first, just because it's easier and it's very helpful to know the dictionary form of verbs before you get into like conjugating them into polite forms. So I teach this as one of the first conjugations, which isない. This is the conjugation, and all you have to do to make this conjugation is move, for the go down verbs as they're called, move that u on the end of the dictionary forms up into the a version. So for asobu, we move from bu to ba, asoba, and add nai. Asobanai, I don't play, will not play. So it's very, very useful. You need to be able to say things you will not do pretty early on. Probably going to be one of your first conjugations. I'd give it S tier, personally. That's why I taught it first. Yeah, S tier. It's got to be S tier. Mashita. Mashita it's got to be S tier. And we're going to put it next to masu because it's the past tense. You do it exactly the same way as you do the mas form, which you can learn more about in this video or that video if I didn't explain it well enough earlier. You just add mashita instead of masu to the end of a mas stem that you've created to get the past tense in polite Japanese. So tabemasu is the present polite tense, and then tabemashita is the past tense, the polite past tense. So that's very important, easy to get to. Okay, we got that out of the way. Masu, by the way, is also combined with its negative form, which is masen. That's the negative polite. So it's the same as nai, but it's the negative. So that's masen, tabemasen. So that is conjugated exactly the same way as the mas or mashita, but you add masen to the end instead, and that makes it negative. Will not do the thing. So I wanted to say that first before bringing up masenka, because masenka is a little bit different, and that's why we're going to bring this one down to B tier. Masenka, it uses the negative, right? So it's not, so tabemasen, not eat. But if you add that ka there, you think tabemasenka. It's the question. You will not eat, and literally that's correct. But what it is a very polite invitation. You're inviting someone to do something. Tabemasen ka? Won't you eat this? Or asobimasen ka? Won't you play? So it's useful, but not quite what you'd expect. So, or maybe it is. Maybe it's what you'd expect. I'm not sure. We're gonna bring that down to B tier. Although you'll learn it pretty fast just because it's not that complicated. No connecting particle, that's got to come up here. That's got to be S tier. That's like super S tier. It's confusing for people for various reasons. I think it's because of the way it's taught in relation to English. And that is because it's often taught as either the possessive, Andy no smaho, which is smartphone, my Andy's smartphone. So that's like the possessive, but it's also thought of as like a way to make complex nouns. So like, for example, if we were to say Nihon no ocha, so Japan's tea. So tea of Japan. It's sometimes taught with that of, but backwards. Tea of Japan. And what happens with a no complex word, I like to call it a complex noun, is that you can have like a long string of these. You can have a really long string of these. I actually came up with a really good example one, which is something like Nagano kindergarten's teacher's favorite stuffed animal. If you were to take that English, it would be like Nagano yochien no sensei no ichiban suki na nuigurumi no kaban or something. So that stuffed animal's bag. So you can have this like really long string of no's, and it gets very confusing for people. But the most important thing is that the most important thing, the thing that is being described by all of the nouns or things that come before it, is the final noun in the no particle string. And you can think of that whole no particle string as a single object, a single noun that I like to nowadays call a complex noun. Just because it's, I don't know, I think it makes sense. So it's a little bit confusing, but I even think the possessive is basically the same thing. It's not actually the possessive. It's just that Andi no smaho is now a complex noun, and it's describing that the smartphone in terms of me. The smartphone, it's being described as mine. One more of the last like conjugation things that I think are pretty straightforward is the masen deshita, which is the negative past tense, the negative past tense, polite past tense. So if we have masu, masen, and then the past tense of des is deshita, then masen deshita is the negative past tense. So tabemasen deshita, I did not eat. That's A tier. It's got to be A tier, right? Yeah, we'll drop that in A tier. All right, it's a new day. We're back at it. We've got about 28 more grammar points to cover. Got na adjectives. Na adjectives. I don't know if I'd really consider these like a grammar that you have to learn. It's just a type of word. So it's hard to really classify this as anything because like words like kire and I don't know, shizuka, which means to be quiet. Those are just adjectives that are not e adjectives when like words like tanoshii and omoshiroi, so they don't end in the e character on its own, which means that when you connect them to a noun that they're describing, you need to use a na particle, it's called a connecting na particle, to modify the actual noun with it. So kirei na hito, a beautiful person, or shizuka na machi, a quiet town. So you need that na, I don't know, I guess you call it a particle, to actually use the na adjectives. And yeah, whether or not that's actually a grammar, it's kind of hard to say, but you need to know what they are right away. So I don't know. It's just really important and it's not that difficult. So I guess we'll just throw it in the S tier. I mean, it's AS. I don't know. It's hard to really decide where to put this one, but we're just going to call it S tier because you need to know it like quickly as quickly as possible. Let's pull this one up. This one just caught my eye. It's te kudasai. So we've learned the te form. I've already mentioned this one earlier in the video, and that is if you have the te form of a verb and you just use it, you say tabete to someone, it's like a request for them to actually eat. And if you add kudasai to it, it makes it a polite request, and that's very important to do. It's especially with people that aren't necessarily children, or people who are very, very close to you. So if you want to request that someone do something, ここに書いてください. ここに書いてください. Please write something here. You want to use te kudasai. So that's very, very, very important one to learn. That's at least A tier. You need the te form before you can use it, so it's probably not something you're going to learn before the te form, which is up there in S tier. So let's go ahead and put that in the A tier. Popping over to the teal line, let's go with the ka particle that means or. This one is very, very interesting. So the ka particle or, it basically just means or, and it's used like any other particle, kind of like visually, not visually, but like structurally like the to particle that means and. So you basically connect words with it. If we look at our at the website, we have neko ka inu. So cat or dog. Kuruma ka jitensha ka dochira de iku. So car or bike. Which one do you go by? You can have just one ka connecting the two things, or you can have one connected to the first thing and one at the end of the second thing. You can have multiple things. It can also be used in a bit of a later grammar point to mean something like whether or not. Literally, it's still just or. So iku, if you connect it to verbs though, especially verbs in the positive and negative, it can mean whether or not. So iku ka, ikanai ka. So will go or not go, or wakarimasen, I don't know. So it can be used in that way as well, but it shows up much, much later in most grammar books. I don't even know if it's covered in N5, even though it is technically the same particle. It's not really any different. It's just being used with verbs instead of with nouns. So people get confused by that, or I guess textbooks get confused by that because they teach it as something separate, but it's really the same thing, and it just means or. But because it has a little bit of complexity to it, I don't think we can give it in an S tier just because it's a little bit difficult. It's a little bit difficult for people in the beginning, I think, especially when we get to the whether or not version of it. But it is very, very powerful. And you need to be able to say things like or pretty early on in your experience, I feel like. So we're going to throw that up in A tier. Stuff that you really need to get down and that probably isn't too difficult. I guess we go with the to quotation particle, and we're gonna do these three together. To quotation particle, to omou, to you. And this to particle, it is put on something that is a quotation sort of, and then you use other verbs to modify whatever that thing is. So I heard someone describe this kind of as the o particle for quotes or for things you're thinking, things like that. So you basically connect it to a full phrase. For example, yesterday I went to the mall. To itteita. So that's the quote. Yesterday I went to the mall. And then to itteita is something like they said or they were saying. So we use that along with verbs like to say, to think, things like that, and to connect them. And that's why we have to you and to omo on their own like this, or along with the particle, because they basically need to be used in combination. You need to have this to marker, this to particle marking the thing that was said or was thought. So I think they kind of go together. You're never going to learn this on its own without these words. They just come one after the other in succession when you're going to be learning them together. So I basically think that they're very, very important, but you needing to say what other people have said to you is not going to be something you do right away. So it's not something you're going to learn like right at the beginning. It's sort of mid to late N5, I'd say. So probably where I've dropped this automatically in the B tier is where the to you, so that's to say or said, and the think, to think, I think they all go kind of together. The cool thing about to omo, which actually may bring it above to you, I think I'll leave it in B. But the cool thing about it is that it has a secondary function where when you say I think in Japanese using to omo, it softens what you're saying. It makes you sound less confident in your answer, which sort of sounds weak if you're to say it in English, like just say what you think or what you believe without needing to say I think. But in Japanese, softening what you're saying is a very important thing because sounding less sure of yourself is more polite. And it puts less pressure on the other people listening to you, so they don't like have to believe you if they don't want to. It's like, this is what I think. It's not necessarily true. Take it or leave it. So doing that when you're speaking Japanese is very important if you want to be polite. So to omo has that function as well, but I think we are just going to leave it on the B tier. Shi ni iku is one you're going to learn pretty early on, and that is maybe not that early on. When do you usually learn this? I think you will learn this one. I can't remember where Genki teaches it, but basically the shi in shi ni iku is the mas stem of suru, which is to do. So it's do, target, go, which I talked about this a little bit earlier with the ni particle. This ni is just targeting the verb with go. You go, and what is your target of going? Whatever that verb is. It's not necessarily suru. It's just the mas stem of whatever verb it is. So tabe ni iku becomes go to eat, go to eat, go target eat. Or asobi ni iku, so go target play. That's all that is. It's very useful because you can say what you're going to do at certain places. But it's probably like, it's not very complicated, but you definitely need the mas form first before you can use it. You need to be comfortable with the ni particle. So it's definitely not going to be up in S tier. And while most of these could be considered A tier, I feel like we're going to have to drop this into B because it is quite specific and you need other grammar points. Quite a few other grammar points to really make it work. So that's where that's going to go. Next, we're going to bring up the conjunction node. And it is basically the same as the conjunction kara, which we learned, or we didn't learn it. I've been just talking about it. Where did I put that one? Dakara. Yeah. So it's basically the same as dakara. Here it is. Same color. Node, kara. Except it's a little bit more polite. And there is this nuance with node, although a Japanese person you ask probably wouldn't necessarily realize that this was the nuance with node. And that nuance is that node makes it sound like the first part of the sentence, the reason, is something that both you and the listener agree are true. So essentially, you wouldn't say something that the listener had no idea of in the first part. Although you may, but technically there is that sort of implication that you both sort of agree that the first part of the reason in your therefore sentence is it's agreed upon, that it's a fact. Like, 明日雨が降るので something something. So tomorrow it will rain, therefore something something. So you both know it's going to rain tomorrow in that situation. Because you both watch the weather or something, or you're watching it right now. Now, with that said, that's not such a big deal and not something you really need to worry about. In reality, it really is just the same as kara, like in practice, just a more polite version. You'll use this more with mas des forms than you might kara, although you're going to use kara with them as well. So it's not too big of a deal. You don't need to worry about it too much. I would say they're basically the same thing, but because there is that slight nuance difference and it is a bit more polite than dakara, and thus also a little less commonly used, I'd say. I think we're gonna drop it in B. Lots of B's today. Okay, staying in the let's do some combination particles. We've got a couple here. Let's pull up yone. I'm gonna put that in B for now, and let's go ahead and bring up my description of it here. Yone is obviously a combination of the yo and ne particles, so friendly new info, and the Canadian like right. So let's go ahead and read this. So the yone sentence ending particle combination is similar to de shou in that it means isn't that right or don't you think? It can also emphasize agreement, which should be clear from context. This isn't quite the friendly new info yo. It's more of the sort of more sort of a forceful sort of yo. Trying to get someone to do something, but it's still kind of friendly. And then the ne also keeps it friendly, but is asking for that sort of agreement from the person. So more so than just using ne on its own, this one actually wants an answer from the speaker. It's eliciting agreement from the speaker more so than just ne on its own. So it's actually very commonly used, but you want to be a little bit careful with it because omoshiroi yo ne makes it sound like you think the other person thinks the same thing, and you're going to be surprised if they give you a separate answer. So it puts a little bit of pressure on the listener to agree with you, and that's fine because there are situations where that's necessary and where you do really think that the other person thinks the same thing. And sometimes it's just, friendly. 昨日は楽しかったよね. Like, we had fun yesterday, didn't we? And so it can just be friendly, but it's a little bit finicky, I guess. So I think we're gonna leave that one in B. You're gonna hear it a lot right from the beginning probably, and you want to be able to use it quite early on, but it is a little finicky, so we're not gonna give it A tier, and it is really, really common, so it's hard to put it in C or D, so I think B is pretty appropriate. Some multiple particle combinations. We've got dewa. So we've already learned that de means utilization. You're utilizing some thing, place, whatever, tool to do an action. And that is the same as the de in this one. And then the wa particle is marking that as a new topic. It's marking the thing that you're utilizing along with the utilization of it as a topic. Jumping over to my my website, the dewa particle combination is similar to the niwa combination we learned earlier. We'll do that next, actually. The dewa combination allows us to make via x a new topic of discussion, which is what I just mentioned, and also to use the wa particle's ability to contrast things, which I also talked about earlier, as in the second example below. The second example being 学校で勉強するからうちでは勉強しない. So, school via study, do, therefore, uchi, house, dewa, via the home, that's a new topic, but it's also it's contrasting with the previous sentence, study, not do. So that can also be used to do contrasting things. 廊下では走ってはいけません. So via the hallway, that's the topic. 走ってはいけません. You're not allowed to run, or you must not run. So it can do both things. It can make via a location a topic, but it can also contrast the place, that area, or that tool that you're utilizing with some other tool. 電話では話さない. So this is also contrasting. It's via the telephone, I don't talk, but I talk in other situations. So that's something that de is doing. And it's a little bit complex. You're not going to be learning this one right away, but you'll see it all over the place. But you're probably, I don't even think you'll... does this show up in N5? I don't even know. Genki 1 definitely doesn't teach it. I think it first appears somewhere in Genki 2. I don't even know if it's explicitly taught as a grammar point, though. With that said, it is very useful, and you absolutely need it in many different situations. But because it's arguable whether this is even N5 or not, some lists do list it as N5. I taught it in N5 because I think there's just some situations where you have to use it. You can't get away with not using it. But it's not like a ton of situations that you're going to run into in N5. So let's just drop this one around C, because it is a little bit complicated. And we'll throw niwa there as well, because niwa is essentially the same, except it makes the target location, the location being a target, the topic of discussion. So let's see what I said about that one. The ni and wa particles can be combined to make the topic of a sentence in at location, or at time, or location target. Topic, that's the topic, or time target, that's the topic. For example, Nihon ni wa, so target Japan, topic. Yama ga takusan aru, there are many mountains. Mountains, subject, many exist. Uchi ni wa, so in the house, or target house, is the topic. Inu ga iru, a dog, subject, exists. Juji ni wa, so target 10 o'clock, that's the topic. Nani aru, what exists. Something like that. Same kind of idea as with dewa, but it's more target instead of via. The same differences as there are between de and ni particles in general, except you're just making them both the topic, or you're contrasting those locations with some other location. So I'll put these both in C because they are a little bit complex, but not a big deal. We'll also throw Nemo up here. It's the same idea. You're just marking the location as a target, as something that is someplace that is also some way. What I said here was particles can often be combined. In the case of the mo particle, it is unable to take on the role of the target marker ni. It is only used to mark something that would normally take o, wa, or ga as an also. It's a little bit weird, but you can't say Nihon mo itta, because mo does not have the function of marking something as a target. It only has the function of marking something as also. So you have to have both in that kind of situation. So ここに猫がいる。あそこにも猫がいる. So over there also, a cat exists. The target location that they exist in is over there as well. I would say that is just as complicated as dewa, niwa. But the thing is when you learn mo, you're actually going to learn this in combination with it. And I've put mo in A tier. Because if you are trying to mark a location you also went to with mo, you have to use it in combination with ni. So you're going to learn it anyway along with mo, but it's probably not going to be super easy for you to wrap your mind around. It wasn't even super easy for me to explain just here. Let me know if it made sense to you. It might not. So I think I'm going to put that in B tier just because it is a little bit difficult. It's a little bit difficult to explain even. All right. The next one we're going to go with is naide. And what this is this is the negative te form of verbs. Naide, we'll drop that in B for now. So basically, if you say tabete, it means request to eat. So tabete, eat. This is the negative request. Tabenaide, so don't eat. Tabenaide, and you can actually add kudasai to that. We'll pull that one up here as well. And that is the polite request to not do something. Tabenaide kudasai. Please don't eat. Naide is just the negative te form on its own, so it can be a request on its own, but it can also perform the same other functions that the te form can perform. So remember, te form can mean and. It can connect two clauses just like and can. So tabete nemashita. So ate and slept. So it can be used as and to connect two clauses. Well, tabenaide. Naide can also be used like that. It can be used to connect two clauses, but when the first verb is negative. Tabenaide neta. So I didn't eat and slept. So that it can do both of those things. And I believe that's how I taught this one, is the first and connector for the negative. Naide is another negative te form of verbs that we have alluded to throughout this deck. We have already learned nakute, and I mentioned that you cannot use that conjugation for requests. So there is another negative te form as well, which I think we learned along with the te form, which is nakute. Yeah, and that one cannot be used for requests. It can just be used for connecting two sentences together. But so anyway, it tends to indicate that the verb is the reason for the clause that follows. So tabenakute onaka ga suita. So the fact that I didn't eat is the reason I'm hungry. So the nakute version sort of has that nuance, while tabenaide nemashita is just a description of what occurs. So naide is a little bit more constricted in its meaning. It's used for requests, or it's just a description of the things that occurred when it's used to connect things together. Andないでください is just a straight up request, and you can't say なくてください, which is the regular negative of the te form. So anyway, because of that, we're going to drop this one in demo. Is it A? 食べないで寝た. No, I think that belongs. I think they both belong in well, this one belongs in D at least, but te kudasai, I think naide kudasai and te kudasai essentially go together. Because if you can say tabete kudasai, if you can request that someone do something, you should also be able to request around the same time that they don't do something. Tabe naide kudasai. So I think those two go up here, but naide as the te form, because it's a little bit more complex than a normal te form, goes in B. But the thing is for you to understand naide kudasai, you might as well learn naide as well, because you probably should learn naide first and then learn naide kudasai, since you're attaching something to naide. And you've already learned nakute when you learn the te form. So while I want to put naide in B and naide kudasai in A, that really doesn't make sense. So I think we have to put them together in A. Naide and naide kudasai should probably be something you learn quite early on. It can be a little complex, but the more examples you run into over time, the more it will start to make sense. Okay. Whew. Getting through them. Te mo ii is essentially you take the te form of a verb, te, and add mo ii, so also good. So tabete mo ii means eat and also good is the literal translation. How we'd say that in English is it's okay if you eat it, or you can eat it. So tabete mo ii. And you can use that in questions as well. Tabete mo ii desu ka would be, is it okay if I eat this? Literally, eat and also okay it is. Something like that. Very, very literal translation is a bit finicky, but that's what it means. Te mo ii. And if you want to ask if it's okay if you can do something ever, you need this. So this is pretty early on. You're going to learn this right around when you learn the te form, I think. Quite soon after that. It's going to be very useful if you actually intend to speak Japanese ever. Teはいけないis often it's often taught along with te mo ii. Te wa ikenai, tabete wa ikenai. So you must not eat. Hashitte wa ikenai. You must not run. It's often taught in combination with te mo ii because it's essentially the opposite. But I don't necessarily think that makes sense, because you don't really need to be forbidding people to do things in the same breath as asking if it's okay if you do something, right? And if you ask someone if it's okay if you, for example, I don't know, take a picture, I don't necessarily think they're going to say 写真を撮ってはいけません. They're not necessarily going to use this grammar. They're just going to say no. So it's okay if you learn this one a little bit after te mo ii. It is important to be able to read, or when you read this on like a sign or something, 走ってはいけません. You must not run. It is important to know that so that you don't, slip and die. But I don't feel like it warrants being taught right along te mo ii. So I think we're going to pop this one down in the C rank. All right, the next thing that caught my eye was te iku and te kuru. Interesting thing is that you immediately run into this early on. If you're using the Genki textbooks, you run into this grammar really early on, but it's not taught as a grammar. It's you learn a word that is actually a combination of one word and this grammar. And that's because you can't actually use this word in the way that Genki wants you to use it without this grammar. And that is the word motteiku and mottekuru. So motsu just means to hold or to carry, and motteiku means to take something somewhere, and mottekuru means to bring something to some place. But what those actually are the verb to hold combined with these two grammar points, and that is teiku and tekuru. And it always bothered me that you were learning those words without these grammar points because, I don't know, it's just sort of a lost opportunity. So these words, these grammar points, they tend to be taught later in textbooks, even though I do believe they are considered N5. But I don't think they're taught in Genki at all. I think they're saved until Quartet, which is technically an N3 textbook, which means, I don't know, you're using it without actually learning it really early on, which, I mean, it's okay, but you might as well know what it is, because at least in the usage of to bring or to take, it's not that complicated. There's a video I did with the creator of Satori Reader. I'll pop it up, a link over there, where I go into we go into a lot of detail on tekuru in particular, because there are some it's very deep. There are a lot of things you can cover with both teiku and tekuru that are beyond the scope of N4 even, I believe, but definitely beyond N5. But the simple versions that could be considered N5 are to do and go. So do and go. Tabete iku is to eat and go. And then tabete kuru means to eat and then come to a place. So they're not that complicated in that literal usage, which is to do something and go, or do something and come. In that usage, they're pretty easy to understand, so you can bring them up here and you're going to see them a lot relatively early on. But because they are actually very complex in their usage, in their other usages, and when you see them, the simple do and come version isn't going to make sense in a lot of situations because that's not how it's being used. It probably can't be justifiably put really anywhere up here. C is like the furthest you could go. But because a lot of textbooks don't even bother teaching this in N5, and there's an argument to be made that they might not be N5 at all, we'll probably have to put these in D. You can definitely put these off till later if you're finding them hard to understand, even though the way I just explained it should be clear enough. Next, we have the nominalizing no particle. This is taught in Genki 1 as noga, which is not good because it's not noga, it's just no. And then you can use other particles along with it. Now, what this does is it takes a sentence or a full clause, you put the no on the end, and that turns that whole clause into a noun that you can now do things with. For example, sakana o taberu no. That means fish eat. Fish, object, eat, and I mark that with no. So now the whole thing, which is eating fish, that's how you'd actually nominalize it in English. You'd say eating fish. That's now a noun that I can use things, that I can do things to. In Japanese, you just put no on there. So sakana o taberu no, that's now a noun. So sakana o taberu no ga suki desu. I like to eat, or I like eating fish, for example, right? And that's how Genki teaches it, no ga suki. They actually teach that whole thing as a phrase, no ga suki. So you have a sentence or a verb, and you like doing that verb. That's how it's taught, but it really should be taught separated out as just no nominalizing a clause, because you can do other verbs and other things than just ski with it, right? You can't only use I like with it. You can instead do things like we have some other adjectives here. So tabemono wo kao no ga tanoshii. So to buy food is fun. But you can actually say something suru no o akirameta. I gave up on doing something. And a verb like that requires the o particle because you do that verb to an object. So you can actually make the noun that you've nominalized an object of a verb that requires an object. So it's actually very versatile. You can use many different particles. Like you can attach other particles. You can use like the topic particle. You can make 魚を食べるのは, you can make that the topic, or the contrasting は, you can contrast eating fish with other things. 魚を食べるのは something, anything. So there's lots of things you can do with the no nominalization particle. It can be a little confusing for people at first, so we'll drop it in B. All right, we have a little grammar here that is not necessarily taught as a grammar in most textbooks, but you just learn a bunch of words with it attached. But it is technically a grammar, and that is this kanji, which can be read a few different ways. But when attached to words that are time related, like hours or minutes or whatever, months, it means that something will continue for that amount of time. So for example, 2分間 would be 2 minutes for a span of 2 minutes, or 2時間 for a span of 2 hours, 2日間 for a span of 2 days. So it just means a span of some amount of days. So you're going to learn a bunch of words with this in it already, and you probably won't have to think about it so much because it's just so common. But as an idea of marking a time counter as a span of time by using kan, it's a little bit sort of abstract and something that might not come naturally at first. So I think that one goes in B as well. This one is something that is pretty useful. It's kata, and that's I think it's taught in Genki too, but it is an N5 grammar point, and it's attached to the mas stem of the verbs. So you'd say tabekata, the mas stem of taberu being tabe. And then you just add kata and you get tabekata, and that means the way of eating or how to eat. So tsukurikata, way to make something. So talking about methods of doing something is what this is used for, and it's extremely specific. So I think we're gonna pop it down. I'm not gonna put it in D because it's really simple, but I don't think it justifies being up in even B because it's just so specific. It's just so specific, right? Asking about ways to cook things or ways to learn something, right? It's such a specific type of conversation you're going to be having where you're using this that I don't think it's something that's worthy of being learned immediately, or that you have to worry about like a lot. So I think we'll drop that one in C. Yeah, that makes sense. All right, the next one is toll adverbs. Okay, toll adverbs is not something you'll actually learn probably ever in the JLPT, but it's something that comes up more than you'd expect. And the reason that we taught it in this course is that there were a bunch of words that we learned in the course that are N5 words that are technically listed in dictionaries as toll adverbs, at least in jisho.com. They're listed as other things as well, but essentially words like adverbs that mean, well, let's just read it. You'll sometimes see adverbs with a to coming after them before the verb they modify, or even in sentences where no verb appears. Usually this means the verb is implied from context. When this to is present, there's a bit more emphasis added to the adverb itself than there is to the verb. This is nothing but a subtle difference in nuance that you don't need to worry about. For example, ゆっくりとドアを開ける. So you could absolutely say ゆっくりドアを開ける. So open the door slowly. If you have the to particle, and only certain verbs that are to adverbs can have a to particle attached to them, and you just have to learn them when you learn the adverb. If it's attached there, it puts a little bit more emphasis on the adverb itself. だんだんと小さくなった. So it puts a little bit more emphasis on the fact that it's happening in stages, little by little, than just だんだん小さくなった. In that case, there's more emphasis on the 小さくなった, becoming smaller. We'll actually go to the adverb naru, or the adjective naru, in a minute. But it puts a little bit more emphasis on it. And it's so subtle that it absolutely needs to be in D tier. So subtle. Absolutely has to be in D tier. And in fact, no adjectives also need to be in D tier, because it's also something that is just something we taught because no No adjectives are a type of adjective that shows up in N5 that is never mentioned, but we list the when we cover a word. So if we go like to the word before this, we list the parts of speech that it is. So you can see here we have a noun, adverb, no adjective, and this is the first no adjective that shows up. So in the next section, the very next page, we teach what no adjectives are. So some nouns and adverbs can behave as adjectives. This is the important part. If you use the no particle with them. Technically, they're still just nouns when listed in dictionaries, depending on the dictionary that they're listed in. So, point is that some words, even like this one, takusan, this is one of the first ones you'll ever learn that is a no adjective. Technically, it can be used as a noun, and it can also be technically used as an adverb. So, takusan tabemashita means that you ate a lot. Not that you ate a lot of things, but that you did the action of eating a lot, because it's an adverb, right? But takusan can also modify nouns if you use a no with them. So, たくさんの食べ物 means lots of food を食べました. Whereas if you didn't have that no, たくさん食べ物を食べました means that you ate a lot of food. So it might be the same food, but you ate a lot. You did the action eating a lot on some food. Whereas たくさんの食べ物を食べました means something more along the lines of you ate a lot of food. Maybe you just ate little bits of like 50 different types of food. And so you ate lots of different food. So that it's a subtle difference there. It is one that you need to be aware of, especially with the word takusan, which you learn quite early, because if you want to say you did a lot of something, you need to not use no. And if you want to specify that there were a lot of things, a lot of nouns, you need to have that no particle. So this is another subtle one that you're never going to be taught probably in any textbook you run into, but it is something that happens with these, quote, no adjectives or no adverbs. So no adjectives. We saw a little bit ago adjectives plus naru. If you take an adjective, for example, 楽しい, which is enjoyable, and you cut the e, instead add ku, so 楽しく. By the way, if you cut the e and add ku, that turns an adjective into an adverb. So you've now turned 楽しい into an adverb, 楽しく. Then if you add naru, which means to come, that is the verb that's being modified by the new adverb, 楽しく. So the enjoyable adverb modifies become. So you become enjoyable. So 楽しくなる means to become enjoyable. おいしくなる means become delicious. 静かになる. So with na adjectives, you use ni instead of cutting an e and adding ku because there is no e. Yeah, you get the point. But anyway, it's very useful to become fun, to become happy, to become quiet, etc., etc. We'll pop that one up in the... I'd say we'll put that... you learn it quite late, but... if you understand e-adjectives and stuff, it's not too difficult. But you do have to... I don't think most textbooks teach you that what's happening here is that you're turning an e-adjective into an adverb and then just adding a verb to it. They just teach us like as a grammar point itself. So I guess that complexity, the fact that you need to know that to get an adverb out of an adjective, there's the two different things you got to do. E-adjectives, you cut the e, add ku, and for na-adjectives, you just add ni, and that turns it into an adjective, an adverb. I guess needing to know that makes it a little bit complex. Maybe that because it's a little bit harder to learn. Yeah, we probably got to put that in B, I guess. Okay. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing for you. All right. Next, we'll go ahead with the te iru form, which is, that's 100% A tier or even S tier. But you got to learn the te form first before you can use it. So it's hard to put it in S tier. Let's go ahead and put that in A tier. Te iru is the same as the English ing. So tabete iru means is eating. It can also describe a state of being. Okite imasu. I'm in the state of being awake. I'm not in the state of waking up. Okiru is to wake up, and it doesn't require an object. It talks about a state of being awake. Okiteiru. I am awake. So it's not that much different, and I don't think it's as confusing as a lot of textbook descriptions make it out to be. But if you just try to describe it off the top of your head like I just did, it can sound a little bit confusing. But when you look at the details, you realize, okay, it's basically the same thing. Okay, ましょう is an interesting one. ましょう. A fun thing about ましょう, and I believe I talk about this here, is that the intonation at the end of ましょう, when you say it, can change the meaning of it. For example, mastem plus ましょう means let's do X or shall we do X. Mastem plus ましょうか is the same thing. Shall we do X or let's do X. It's just a little bit more polite. If you have rising intonation on the end of ましょう or ましょうか, it sounds more like shall I do something for you. For starters, it's sort of looking down at people a little bit because it's suggesting that you can do something for someone, which in Japanese it's not impolite, but it does imply that you're in a position to do something that the other person can't do, and you're going to do that for them. So you want to be careful that if you're just trying to say let's do X, to use downward intonation like 食べましょう. Let's eat. 食べましょうか. Shall we eat? Let's eat. But 作りましょうか sounds like shall I make something for you? 作りましょうか sounds like let's make it. So there is that subtle difference with the intonation changes that make it something completely different. That subtle difference means we probably can't put it up in S or A tier, but it is quite useful and taught quite early on, and it's definitely going to be in the N5 test, so we're definitely going to drop this in B, I think. This is a fun little thing. It's not necessarily taught as a grammar point on N5, but it's something I got asked about a lot, so I put it as a grammar point on our website, and that is X する versus X をする. For example, 勉強するversus 勉強をする. So that's going to be our next one. I'm going to put that in D tier for the moment, but let's go ahead and take a look at it. I'm just going to read this out for you guys because I think it's really, really interesting, and you're going to ask this question eventually if you haven't had to ask it yet. So する verbs are verbs that they're basically nouns that you're able to attach the verb to do to, so you can do that noun. For example, 勉強する means to do study, or to study is how it's usually translated in English. But you'll also see things like I just said, 勉強を, so object is 勉強, which is study, する, and to do. And people ask, well, what's the difference? They see sentences with one or the other and they're like, wait a second, which is it? And how do I know when to use which? And this should answer your question. So noun する as a whole is a verb. Noun をする is a noun plus the verb する. Marked as an object. The most important thing to mention is that the meaning is the same, though there is a slight difference in nuance. There's also a few situations where you must use one over the other. This is the important part. When you're using a no string or a complex noun, using no to make a complex noun, you must use をする. For example, 日本語の勉強をする. We made a complex noun, which means the study of Japanese. In that case, you have to make that the object and use する. You can't say 日本語の勉強する. You cannot say that. When you make the object of the verb something other than the noun attached to it, you must use noun する. So for example, 日本語を. So now there's an object, which is Japanese. You can't now say 日本語を勉強をする because you can't have two objects like this being marked by the object. Like you can't have two O's in the same sentence being acted on by a single verb. So instead you need to say 日本語, that's the object of 勉強する, and that is to study. The difference in nuance is that 日本語の勉強する and 日本語を勉強する. If we take the difference in nuance of those, the emphasis in one is on 日本語の勉強, the study of Japanese. There's this emphasis put on the study of Japanese versus the emphasis being put on just Japanese in the second sentence. So Japanese, 日本語を, that's the object, and so that's where all the focus and emphasis is. 勉強する, I study. Whereas 日本語の勉強 is where the study of Japanese is where the emphasis is placed in the other situation. So that's an interesting little tidbit, and I think you're probably going to ask that quite early on. But it's not necessarily something you need to study right away. It's just something you're going to run into like pretty early on. So we're going to drop that into the B tier. Okay, these two go together, toki with nouns and toki with verbs. So let's go ahead and see what I had to say about those. So toki indicates a time when something took place. It points at a particular point in time. Usually the type of toki is connected to said point in time with the no particle. So for example, 子供の時, the point in time when I was a child. 5歳の時, when I was 5 years old. Quite simple, you're going to need it right away. I think Genki teaches this within like the first 3 lessons or something. And there's not much beyond that. Like, it's not too complicated. When you want to talk about your past, you'll probably use this quite early, but I don't think it's really A tier. It doesn't warrant A tier, probably B tier. Okay, so where Toki gets complicated is when you use it with verbs. And that's because you can have different tenses before Toki if you're using verbs, and after it, because you have something that you did, and that's the time. The Toki marks the time that you did that that you did that thing, and then something you did while you were in that place. For example, if we were to say America ni iku toki, so when I go to America, pizza o tabemasu, and that's in the present tense, so I eat pizza. This little chart here is indicating, the pizzas indicate when the eating of pizza happens, and the clock indicates the current time at which I could be speaking. And this little symbol marks off the time that the Toki itself indicates. So America ni iku toki. So iku toki, that's when I go there. That's all in here. Pizza o tabemasu. So I could be eating pizza while I'm in the process of going there or while I'm there. And I can be talking about this at any time because it's just saying when I go to America, I eat pizza. Iku toki, past tense after that, pizza o tabeta. So I ate pizza when I went there. This could also essentially be the same, but you can only talk about it after the eating of pizza has already happened. So you've already gone, you're already back from there, you ate the pizza, you're talking about it after the fact. These should probably actually be over here. So itta toki, so when I went, that was over here. I was in the process of going. Now I'm in that goal location. So it's talking about that, whatever comes after it in the present tense. Pizza o tabemasu. So when I've gone and arrived in America, I'm in the goal location, pizza o tabemasu. So that's when it happens. And I can only talk about it either before I go or after I've come back. Itta toki, past tense and past tense, pizza o tabeta. So I'm in the goal location, that's when I ate the pizza, and I talk about it after. You did it after you arrived, but while you were there. So that probably didn't make sense to you, and you might not even be left on this video. If you are left on this video, please leave a comment saying that you're still here. It was probably pretty complicated, and the only way it's really going to start to make sense is after you see it in lots of different situations and try using it yourself. So it's a very, very complex grammar point that is taught pretty early on, but is going to be tough to wrap your head around. It's quite useful, but I wouldn't worry about it too much because you will just get used to it over time, which means as far as priorities and when you should be learning it, I'm going to drop this one finally in the D tier. And that means we've come to the end of my tier list. I'm going to take a look at this quick. Let's see. S tier, we have the de particle, ni particle, to particle, des, mas, mashita, to particle, that means and. O particle, ga particle, yeah, that all makes sense. Te form, definitely S tier. Janai needs to be S tier. I'll move that over to the des, next to des, since those go together, basically. Nai, no connecting particle, yeah, that's got to be learned really, really early, probably like right at the beginning. And then na adjectives are something you're going to learn really early on. Yeah. That's good. That's fine. A, mole particle. A little bit complex. That's why I put it in A. It's probably S tier, but no, I think A makes sense. E adjectives, past tense. Yeah, that's probably got to be here in A. Ho ga yori. I put that in A tier. Does that make sense? Could those be B tier? They're quite specific, but it's nice to be able to talk about your preferences quite early on. And it's not that complicated. So yeah, we'll leave that in A tier. Ga conjunction, yeah, that's A tier. Therefore particle, yeah. The particle itself, that's probably A tier. You know what? I think dakara should come up to S tier. That should be up in S tier. Ka question particle. Yeah, A's fine with that. I honestly think that learning short forms early on is better. But you should be able to ask a question right away, right? Maybe ka question particle comes up to S tier. Yeah. Made, kunai, yeah, that's fine. Tai, that's definitely A. Y and yo ending particle, na ending particle. Those are pretty. They go hard. Those are S tier. Those are S tier. You need them, especially if you're going to be using things like da. Nakereba naranai, that's definitely A tier. Masen deshita form, yeah, that's A tier. Although past tense negative, you kind of need it if you're going to be using mashita. You need to say you didn't do something. Is that also S tier? Does that go along with mashita? S tier, yeah. Yeah, that's probably S tier as well. There's a lot of S tier, man. But these are things you need to learn like right away that are going to be useful to you right away. So that makes sense. Te kudasai being down here is fine because te form is S tier. It means you're going to learn it quite early on. Naide is fine in A tier because it's not quite as simple as the negative te form, which is just nakute. Ka particle or, yeah, A. Definitely. Te mo ii, I think that's A. That makes sense. Te do A, yeah. Ya particle, Wa particle, really confusing. You're going to learn it really early on. But because of its complexities, we drop it down to B. No, I know. I know what I said that brought me down to the B tier, but you do need to be able to bring up a new topic right away. So at least in its topic form, in its just simple topic form marking, it's definitely A tier, although it's a little more complicated than ga. It's definitely S tier if it's just topic, if that's all it did. But because it gets a little confusing when combined with ga particle, and people start to think it's a subject because it sometimes happens to mark the subject. Yeah, it's got to be A. Okay, I think this is it, guys. I think that's my tier list. That's my N5 grammar tier list. If you found this video useful and you'd like to learn more and you want to learn words that can go along with these and actually learn how to use them, check out tokiniandy.com or subscribe to this channel to get lots more stuff. Lots more Japanese learning. I gotta thank Alex, who gave me the idea for this video. This is Alex here. He's awesome. He's been developing some cool stuff for tokiniandy.com that will be announced very soon. You're gonna love it. If you enjoyed this video, let me know. Maybe I'll do something like it for N4 eventually. If you didn't like this video, let me know. Maybe I'll never do something like this ever again. If you made it to the end of the video, you're awesome. Bananas for you. Just lots of bananas. Hope you had a great time. We'll see you in the next one.